much taking a hardline stance on issues involving the Muslim population in Europe and especially in Great Britain, dealing with different grooming gangs and so many different other issues that he believes is directly related to the rise of the Muslim extreme community in London and in other places. Well, it turns out that he made a pretty bad decision of his own. It can now be reported after a gag order, and we're going to get to that in a second, that, Tommy Robinson, who's a founder of the English Defence League, was arrested and summarily sentenced to 13 months in prison for covering on social media a story about a trial currently going on involving people of Muslim descent in one of these alleged grooming gangs. And this has sparked protests as a result, saying that he was arrested on, breaching the peace while filming a live feed from outside the courtroom. Not outside the courtroom, outside the courthouse, I should say. So there's a lot of moving parts here. Apparently Tommy Robinson, who himself was already on a suspended sentence for this type of contempt prior, when he filmed and did a similar thing on another trial, admitted to committing contempt of court by publishing information that, according to the court, could prejudice a sensitive ongoing trial. And as a result of having the suspended sentence already, was sentenced to go to jail, do not pass go, do not collect $200. Now, this involves some quirky laws in the UK, and, thank God we have the First Amendment here, folks, because the way that, freedom of speech works in other places, it really is curtailed and curbed to the point where shows like this wouldn't be able to be around, with dissenting voices talking about controversial issues. Robinson had been aware of the reporting restrictions in place and thought that he was only saying things that were already in the public domain. But again, he was on a suspended sentence, and knowing that he did this anyway. And now there's a whole bunch of uproar. There's a protest going on. Hashtag Free Tommy is hitting the Twitters. And, there was a major protest outside of Downing Street calling for his release. Police were scrambled to the area to get crowds under control. There was some clashes with police as well. Talk about bad decisions. This is pretty much the definition of it. So, when you're talking about bad decisions here, obviously the first bad decision is on Tommy Robinson himself. You want to be an agent provocateur, don't do it when you're on a suspended sentence and you can go to jail. There's bad decision right off the bat. But I think also the bad decision here has to do with the court, in my opinion, overreaction to reporting on information. Now, because Tommy Robinson's an agent provocateur, and because he's out there talking about controversial issues, there's probably a presumption out there that he's up to no good, that he's a no-good-nick, that he's looking to rabble-rouse and cause trouble. And the court may have acted on that presumption and thrown the book at him to send a message. But the message that's being sent is that any sort of semblance of democracy is dead. There's a gag order on all media covering this story for several days before it was allowed to come out. It was on social media from sources outside the country. But it wasn't confirmed until a couple of days ago, and this is many days after the incident happened. So the UK is not exactly showing its best side to the world with this. In fact, it kind of makes me feel glad that we had that whole revolution, chalk up another reason for that. And that, we have a First Amendment that is, much more expansive, much more permissive, allows me to do a show like this. So, bad decisions all around, probably an overreaction on the part of the Crown Court in Leeds. Definitely a bad decision by Tommy Robinson, who was already out there knowing he had a strike against him and that they're looking for him to mess up, and he goes and he does this. And bad decisions by protesters now who are turning a bad decision into a bad protest. And, I see people on social media talking about Free Tommy Robinson here. And while I understand that you want to make a statement about free speech and First Amendment rights and how great of a country we are, it's maybe not a great decision to jump on the bandwagon of someone who had already admitted to doing wrong, admitted to doing wrong a second time, and now has to accept the consequences of it. And that's going to round out Bad Decision Week. Final thought time, real quick. I want to thank everybody for listening to this show again. We're going to try to do it as more regularly as possible, as time and my own life allows. We're going to try to get Russ back on the show as soon as possible, and we're going to get going with this TV project that we're all excited about. But as a final thought, it looks like it's tightening up, folks. That big blue wave that we were all promised may actually turn out to be just a little ripple. That is if you believe polls right now saying that the generic ballot, R versus D, is tightening up to within the margin of error. Some polls even having the Republican ahead of the Democrat. But here's the thing about these polls, folks. Don't get seduced by the generic poll. You have to start looking at individual races. The time may not be now to do that because you're going to see a lot of primaries shaking out. But the time will be coming probably after Labor Day. We start looking at these individual races, looking at the character and the policy positions of those who are running, and see where the lay of the land is of the country is then. Right now, all indications to me, as I look at a few different primaries that happened recently, is that Democrat primaries are skewing far left. And that couldn't be better news for Republicans, especially Republican incumbents out there. As we saw, voters are not willing to go so far left to stop an agenda that seems to be working. Extra money in the pocket from the tax breaks, better economy, better unemployment than there was before, a positive outlook on life. That all tends to want to stay status quo rather than going so far left and make a radical departure from what many feel is already a successful run. Be okay with the polls and be optimistic, but be cautiously optimistic and check back after the summer to see how things really are when we go past the generic and into the specific. Well, that's going to do it for this week's show, folks. I want to thank you for listening to the show once again. Check us out, www.behindenemylinesradio.us. But until next week, from the People's Republic of New York, Gene Baradelli, Behind Enemy Lines, time to shut this sucker down. We are out of here. Good night, folks.
Our position has been compromised. It's time to roll out. Report for debriefing at www.behindenemylinesradio.us and look for regular communications via Facebook and Twitter at BEL_radio. You are the resistance. Behind Enemy Lines. A rock radio production. Copyright 2016. Back in 7 days. Out.